Republicans have wanted to put funds for those in different legislation. But ultimately, that's where we are with this one right now. We're going to keep our eyes on it, see what happens with the legislation, also look into what other companies out there might give money back. It appears to be like most things right now, just an incredibly messy situation. But from that, I want to share some stuff I love today, and today in Awesome, brought to you by Bright Cellars. You know, honestly, with this extended quarantine, Bright Cellars has been incredibly clutch as someone that enjoys wine. And the thing is, whether you're a seasoned vet or you can't tell a Merlot from a Moscato, Bright Cellars offers fantastic wine selections curated just for you, delivered straight to your home, office, or wherever. And tailoring a wine selection specifically to your taste is simple and easy. Bright Cellars customizes each pick based on your answers to an easy 7-question quiz. And not only that, but each delivery includes wine education cards with tasting notes, pairing suggestions, wine origin, and even the best serving temperature for each bottle. Best of all, you don't have to leave your home. You just let the right wines come to you. It's perfect for the at-home date night or the daily dinner pairing. Best of all, if you just click that link down below, or you head over to brightcellars.com/DeFranco, you take their 7-question quiz, they'll give you 50% off your first 6-bottle box. And the first bit of awesome is today's show is so big that I wanted to include, it was not really a serious story in today's show, but once again, there was a lot to cover today. And so if you'd like me to cover that Twitch sub-shaming story that was all over the place, which I still feel like it has to be a troll, I uploaded my reaction and response to that over at youtube.com/DeFrancoDoes, which, hey, it gave me a reason to use that channel after 8 months. You can check that out after today's show. Then, in another bit of awesome, as you may be able to tell from the bags under my eyes, I woke up at 1 a.m. this morning. I'm very tired now. I was unable to go back to sleep, but it gave me the time to finish Final Fantasy VII Remake, and oh my god. I know the last time I gushed about this, but having finished it, I have to say, if you played the original, you were a fan of the original, you need to play this. I don't want to ruin anything, but stuff in this game has huge implications for how the story continues. So yeah, there's that. Then Wired gave us Every Dog Breed Explained Part 2. We had John Krasinski throwing a quarantine prom with Billie Eilish and the Jonas Brothers. We also saw Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman join the All-In Challenge, which, fantastically, last time we talked about it, had raised over $4 million. As of recording this video, over $13.7 million has been raised. So you just love to see it. Also, on the note of Hugh Jackman, we got a trailer for his new HBO film, Bad Education. And if you want to see the full versions of everything I just shared, the secret link of the day, really anything at all, links as always are in the description down below. And then let's talk about the coronavirus protests we're seeing in the States here, starting off with this standoff that has gone viral. Notably, that scene was from a protest yesterday in Denver. There we saw 2 medical workers blocking lines of trucks and cars as people try to protest Colorado's social distancing law. Or those people calling for an end to lockdown measures and for non-essential businesses to reopen. I remember last week we saw similar protests in Washington's capital, and since then we've seen demonstrators protesting stay-at-home orders in at least 20 different states. This including Texas, Maryland, Minnesota, Virginia, Tennessee, and Arizona. And like we saw with Michigan, in a lot of these protests you had people staying in their cars, social distancing themselves from others. But you also had scenes like this where people were definitely not social distancing. And one of the biggest examples of that was in Texas, where on Saturday hundreds of people crowded around one another without their masks, some even bringing their kids. There you had people shouting things like "Let us work" and "Fire Fauci," also holding up signs that read "You have no right to keep me out of church." And to give an example of some of the thinking there, we saw one of the protesters say,
I think about the fear that was instilled in me from the initial shock of the outbreak, and it was too much. I don't even get sick hardly anyways. I'm not gonna catch the virus. I'm not rubbing up on people, coughing on people in public. You know, I'm not worried about transmitting a virus that's just like another flu.
But, of course, health experts have repeatedly been telling people that this virus is not like the flu. 1, it's completely new. 2, it's believed that people who aren't showing symptoms can spread it. And 3, there's also no vaccine at this moment. And I'll repeat what I said last week, right? All of this is not to say that these people do not have legitimate concerns and issues. 22 million people have lost their jobs. More will follow. Many don't have the money to pay for rent or other bills. But on the other side of this, you have people like Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, who has argued protests like this may only cause the stay-at-home orders to be extended. And connected to that kind of thinking, we've also seen experts say that if you go back too soon, thus supercharging the spread, this is going to decimate the economy anyway. And I don't mean at the same rate, I mean even worse. Now, with all that said, of course, there was support for the protesters, some of it even seemingly coming from President Trump, who on Friday tweeted, "Liberate Minnesota, then liberate Michigan, and liberate Virginia." And with that, we saw Washington Governor Jay Inslee criticize Trump, saying the president's statements this morning helping encourage illegal and dangerous acts. He is putting millions of people in danger of contracting COVID-19. His unhinged rantings and calls for people to, quote, liberate states could also lead to violence. We've seen it before. And adding, the president is fomenting domestic rebellion and spreading lies. Even while his own administration says the virus is real, it is deadly, and we have a long way to go before restrictions can be lifted. Though yesterday we also saw Trump respond again to the protesters, saying that some governors had enacted lockdown orders that were too tough.
People feel that way. You're allowed to protest. I mean, they feel that way. I watched the protest and they were all 6 feet apart. I mean, it was a very orderly group of people. But, you know, some have gone too far. Some governors have gone too far. Some of the things that happened are maybe not so appropriate. And I think in the end it's not going to matter because we're starting to open up our states. And I think they're going to open up very well.
And on the complete opposite end of this, we've also seen states start to reopen. Notably, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis giving the green light to some cities and counties to reopen beaches. While people aren't allowed to sunbathe, they can still walk, swim, and even fish. With that, on Saturday, we saw people just flocking to the beach, one of the biggest examples being Jacksonville. You know, it's just crowded. And of course, with this, we've seen a lot of pushback. And this because the same day that decision was made, Florida recorded a record number of cases. But also, Florida's not the only state in the process of reopening. We have Minnesota. There we saw Governor Tim Walz signing an executive order reopening outdoor recreational businesses like golf courses and bait shops. Also New York, Connecticut, and New Jersey announcing they would begin reopening marinas and boat yards. We also have Texas, which is expected to lift some restrictions later this week by allowing what Governor Greg Abbott calls retail to go, which basically means that non-essential businesses can deliver or have customers pick up merchandise, but they won't allow anyone to actually shop in the store. Also, regarding the timing, all of this comes as governors have criticized Trump for not doing enough to help states when it comes to testing, that including providing things like swabs, reagents, and other chemical solutions required to run tests. Right now, the United States has been averaging about 146,000 tests a day, but state officials and public health experts have said that is not enough, arguing that the number needs to be several hundred thousand or even millions each day. And on this topic, I mean, last week, researchers at Harvard estimated that in order to ease restrictions, testing needs to triple its current pace. But at the same time, though, Trump has said that the governors are responsible for testing, and also saying,
the United States has the most robust, advanced, and accurate testing system anywhere in the world.
However, later we saw Maryland Governor Larry Hogan pushing back against those claims.
To try to push this off to say that the governors have plenty of testing and they should just get to work on testing, somehow we aren't doing our job, is just absolutely false. Every governor in America has been pushing and fighting and clawing to get more tests, not only from the federal government, but from every private lab in America and from all across the world.
We also saw from Virginia Governor and physician Ralph Northam.
We've been fighting for testing. It's not a straightforward test. We don't even have enough swabs, believe it or not, and we're ramping that up. But for the national level to say that we have what we need, and really to have no guidance to the state level, it's just irresponsible because we're not there yet.
And others, like Ohio Governor Mike DeWine, have argued that only the federal government has the decision to tell the FDA to prioritize companies that are, quote, putting a slightly different formula together. With DeWine going on to say that if the FDA would do that, he could probably double or even triple testing in Ohio. And actually, following concerns like that, yesterday we saw Donald Trump say,
We also are going to be using, and we're preparing to use, the Defense Production Act to increase swab production in one U.S. facility by over 20 million additional swabs per month. We've had a little difficulty with one, so we're going to call in, as we have in the past, as you know, we're calling in the Defense Production Act, and we'll be getting swabs very easily. Swabs are easy.
Trump also defending himself and hitting back against those governors again.
We have millions of them coming in. They're very easy. By comparison, and in all fairness, governors could get them themselves. They really could. All of us. But we're going to do it. We're going to work with the governors, and if they can't do it, we're going to do it.
And then, just this morning, we saw Trump further criticizing Democratic governors, accusing them of playing a very dangerous political game. So that is a chunk of what we're seeing in the United States. But also, with all of this, I want to point out that the United States isn't the only country where people are protesting coronavirus restrictions. Over the weekend, we saw hundreds of people in major Brazilian cities coming out to demonstrate against restrictions imposed by governors who have shut down businesses. And one of the most notable protests was in Brasilia, in front of the Army's headquarters, where around 600 demonstrators gathered, many of whom are not wearing any masks or protective gear. And according to reports, like in the United States, the protesters were mostly right-wing supporters of President Jair Bolsonaro. And in addition to calling to end the restrictions, the protesters reportedly demanded the closure of the Supreme Court and Congress. And also calling on the military to step in and handle the pandemic. So, basically calling for a military coup. And what made this protest even more significant is the fact that Bolsonaro himself actually showed up to give a speech. Like many protesters, he didn't wear a mask or gloves, even coughing multiple times during his speech. And while Bolsonaro himself did not directly call for Congress to be be closed or for there to be a military coup, his appearance was still a huge deal for a number of reasons. First of all, Brazil was under a military rule for over 2 decades, from 1964 to 1985, so calls to give the military more power are highly controversial there. And to that point, we saw tons of people criticizing Bolsonaro, including the likes of former presidents, politicians, and newspaper editorial boards. Reportedly, even top military officials told local newspapers they were upset with the move. And another reason this is significant is because it's part of Bolsonaro's continued efforts to downplay the coronavirus and actively defy his government. This, even though Brazil has the highest number of confirmed cases in all of Latin America, with over 39,000 cases and 2,500 deaths as of this afternoon. But despite that, not only has Bolsonaro openly opposed lockdowns imposed by governors, which he has ironically called dictatorial, he's also gone against social distancing measures advised by both the WHO and Brazil's health ministry numerous times. In the last few weeks, he stepped up his public appearances, meeting with supporters and protesters as well as business owners and others. Also, on Thursday, he even fired his health minister just because he had urged Brazilians to socially distance and stay inside. A move he made despite the fact that a survey from the first week of April showed that a huge majority of Brazilians, about 76%, approved of the health minister's handling of the crisis. And in fact, in a poll published this Saturday, it showed that a majority of people approved the government's regulations despite the impact on the economy. And while Brazil is a really wild and unique situation with everything going on with Bolsonaro, there are also plenty of other similar protests around the world. Anti-lockdown riots broke out in Paris. There, rioters reportedly threw fireworks at police who responded with tear gas. Last week, tens of thousands of migrant workers who were stranded without work or a way to get home held demonstrations in Mumbai, India. There have also reportedly been protests breaking out in Lebanon and Iraq. And those last two are really notable because before this whole situation, there were protests and movements happening. But right before this pandemic, there had been a surge of movements all around the world. And one of the common threads were people protesting government corruption and economic injustice, demanding reform. When the pandemic hit, a lot of those protests largely died out. But now, many experts are saying that these movements are likely to start up again or spread to other parts of the world for two main reasons. First is the economic downturn that the coronavirus has caused and is continuing to cause globally. Numerous experts, including the UN Secretary General, have warned that the economic situation risks increased social unrest and violence. And some saying this is something we're going to see disproportionately in poorer countries that can't afford subsidies for lost jobs and other similar social safety nets. And the second reason we could see more protests is the fact that some leaders out there are using the coronavirus to expand authoritarian measures. Right, a little while back, we talked about how Hungary passed a law allowing the prime minister to rule by decree indefinitely. Kenya also started crackdowns on people breaking curfew, and those crackdowns have now killed more people in the country than the coronavirus. Israel has also used the pandemic to significantly expand its surveillance state. In fact, already we saw protests breaking out in Israel over the weekend against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. There, more than 2,000 protesters took to the street, notably standing 6 feet apart, with the demonstrators accusing Netanyahu of using the crisis to escape prosecution over corruption charges and form an emergency government with his rival. Some reportedly holding up black flags to symbolize what they see as Netanyahu's attack against the country's democratic system. Right, like we talked about before, Netanyahu was charged with fraud, breach of justice, and accepting bribes, but according to reports, he's recently used the pandemic to, quote, gain more control over judicial appointments and assurances that he can remain in office even if he gives up the prime minister's job in a proposed power-sharing arrangement. And to that point, while I was recording, we got the update that Netanyahu and his rival, Benny Gantz, agreed to form an emergency government together. Under that agreement, Netanyahu will serve as prime minister until October 2021. Then Gantz will take over. And this is a huge deal because, one, it's finally a resolution to the 3 elections Israel has had in the last year because their leaders were unable to form a government. And two, because Netanyahu is serving the first term, it means that he'll continue to fight the corruption charges from the prime minister's office, which gives him certain power. Right, so we're seeing that internationally, but also we're seeing countries starting to open back up. Just today, we saw Germany, Denmark, the Czech Republic, and Norway all lifting some restrictions. Outside of Europe, we saw South Korea also easing social distancing rules. Australia and New Zealand have also said they're going to roll back some restrictions soon. This, despite the fact that New Zealand also said it's extending its lockdown for 5 more days. With this, it's going to be interesting and really, somewhat nerve-wracking to watch what happens as restrictions are pulled back. But for now, like with almost every topic right now, we're going to have to wait and see what happens next. The last thing I want to talk about today is actually relatively brief, but it's only brief because we're still getting information. If you have not already heard, there was a tragic and horrifying shooting in Nova Scotia. There was a gunman who was disguised as a police officer who shot and killed people in their homes. The AP currently reporting that 18 people have died, making it the deadliest shooting in Canadian history. According to reports, the suspect is among the dead. So is police officers. Reports also saying that he set houses on fire and that the rampage lasted around 12 hours. As of right now, no motive is known, but authorities say that it is possible the initial victims were initially targeted and the rest were random. Authorities also adding that bodies were found inside and outside of a house on the street where authorities believe the suspect lived, and then more were also found at other locations within 30 miles of the neighborhood. Now, given the timing of this with the coronavirus pandemic, as far as how will people mourn, we saw Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau say,
"The pandemic will prevent us from mourning together in person, but a vigil will be held virtually to celebrate the lives of the victims."
That vigil is set to be held online on Friday, with Trudeau also saying,
"I know that the vast majority of Nova Scotians will have a direct link with one or more of the many victims. And the entire province and the entire country is grieving right now as we come to grips with something that is absolutely unimaginable.
Also, I will say something I was happy to see. Justin Trudeau also requested that the media refrain from naming the suspect to avoid giving him any attention. That's something that we've talked about on the show for a very long time, not giving these monsters the attention that many of them crave. But like I said in the beginning, this is brief. This is still a developing situation. We're waiting for more information to come out, including more details about the victims. But for now, that's where this story ends, and we'll have to wait to see what other information comes out. And if I can end this on any note, I want to hit two final things. One, my thoughts, my well wishes, my love to all of those affected by this. And secondly, with this horrific tragedy, but also in the time that we're living in, I think it's more important than ever that we tell the people we love while we have them that we appreciate them. Because these are uncertain times for a number of reasons. We're turning a lot of different corners and not knowing what's going to be in front of us. And I know a lot of people are self-quarantining right now, but there's a lot of different ways to love the ones you got while you have them. But unfortunately, on that sad note, that is where I'm going to end today's show. And hey, if you like this video, you like the way that I dive into the news, hit us with a like. Also, if you're new here, definitely subscribe, tap that bell to turn on notifications so you don't miss this daily show. Also, if you're looking for more to watch right now, I got those new ACW clips, or maybe just missed the last Philip DeFranco show you want to catch up, you can click or tap right there to watch that right now. But with that said, of course, as always, my name's Philip DeFranco. You've just been filled in. I love you.
Zero sugar, muscle milk helps build muscles, but not the muscle that keeps pushing you day after day. Sure, muscle milk helps build muscle, but it takes heart to build strength.
Good morning and welcome to yet another vlog. It's been a while. It's been a while. I don't know why I did that. Matt, cut that. Doing a lot of cleanup today. Okay, we just took this down. And this is just pretty much the background of what I used to paint Octane's art piece that I did for him. And now it's ready to be sent to him. It's right there. Did you get that?
A little bit.
Okay, that's all you needed to do. Anyway, the CDL is moving to online, as you guys know. And it is one of those things where nobody could have predicted something like this happening. Nobody could have prepared for something like this. So we're setting up a LAN because the players are going to be competing out of here, except for Formal. Obviously, as you guys know, Formal lives in California, and for him to travel at this moment in time was going to be a little bit too expensive, because the only way that I was going to put Formal, okay, the only way that I was going to be able to put Formal on a plane is if I bought him a private jet. And when I say I buy him a private jet, I mean rent it. It's one-time use. He's driving back. I even told him I had to go pick him up. I said, I'll grab the Nissan Armada, the most comfortable car you're ever going to be in, and I'm going to go pick you up. 22 and a half hours to get to his house. 22 and a half hours on the way back. 28 hours if we make a stop in El Paso, Texas, and go to a taco place called Taco Tote.
Good job. Now meet me down here by the edge.
Say, yo, you want to go get the best tacos in Texas? And when they say yeah, I'm going to get them in the car, and I'm just going to drive. What's he going to do, jump out? Who am I going to prank? I don't know. Leave a comment down below if you think that I should prank somebody and tell me who. Anyway, we have to go to storage. We have to go pick up a whole bunch of Actually, not that many PlayStations or monitors, but we do need some because everything else has been spread out because of the amount of content that we'll be creating out of the headquarters up until the virus came along. But for the time being, we do need to prepare. Now, I've done a lot of preparation in order to, I had to get 3 internet lines, 3 separate internet lines, just as a preemptive attempt to make sure that competitive integrity maintains competitive. What I mean by that is that we won't be able to, we won't get hit offline. Okay, we have 3, we've taken appropriate measures. I've had to cut a couple of deals with different people to make sure that everything's taken care of, and my internet provider, being the sweethearts that they are, have been very agreeable to make sure that that happens. Okay, it's time to go. Okay, what am I forgetting? Okay, so tables are here, chairs are here, monitors, 2 monitors, 2 Xbox on PlayStations, and then we are good to go. Maddie, I'm driving, but you gotta come with because you gotta carry this stuff. As I was saying, the amount of stuff that we need to do, though, I mean, you guys have seen it before, right? Like, the second that this gets turned around, right now is blank. I mean, obviously, Josep was working, Alan is doing what he's doing, but this, in this line, usually we have it here. Since we're only going to have one team, my team, our team, playing out of here, what I figured is that we won't set it up diagonally like this, but instead, we will face it this way. So there will be monitors, well, there'll be a table here, monitors facing that way, so the players are facing this way. That way we can just like pan over them, take pictures, do the creative stuff that we like to do. We're shooting B-roll and a whole bunch of stuff. I'm working on something very special, very cool here. This whole setup, thank you, Maddie, that whole setup is being is being put together because I have a very cool idea for a YouTube video that is going to be forthcoming.
So try to keep it cool. Flying over open lava will definitely heat you up fast. Hit 500 degrees and it's
get one pitch. Let me get my pitch.
like burning molten metal.
Yeah, that's about it. Let's go meet up with Maddie, who is outside getting the Armada ready. And by that, I mean, you know,
And when you get
clean
across,
and stuff.
don't
Clean it a
forget to
little bit.
activate the teleport gate in the Blue Sage's lab. Then we'll be
No
able
one's
to
here.
teleport
No
over
one's here.
and meet you.
This building
Good luck.
is impossible to get into right now. You have to call security. Security then has to buzz you in, and then from after the buzz in, they have to put in the code in the computer to allow the elevator to work. It's crazy. Too much work. Safety first. It's time. It's time. You know, the bad thing about moving online is the fact that there are so many factors that need to be factored into the fact that there might be people who are going to try to derail this thing. The connectivity issue alone is going to be a little bit of a process, right? Because some people have better internet than others. We have excellent internet. We have 3 lines of excellent internet at the studio, as I just mentioned. Other people are playing from home. Foremost connectivity to Texas host or New York host, like there's going to be a difference that shows in there. So although it won't be as clear and concise of a competitive nature, if that makes any sense, it won't be truly competitive. It is what we have. And what were we supposed to do? Not try? What were we supposed to do? Just sit around it and not even give it a shot to keep this year alive? On year 1 of the CDL? Absolutely not. We have always been really strong and self-sufficient in being able to put on shows and to keep the Call of Duty competitive spirit alive. No matter the limitations, no matter the lack of support, no matter anything, we've always had the will and the want to make things happen, right? And that's what we're doing right now. So me putting on a LAN for my Call of Duty team, our Call of Duty team, for your Chicago Huntsmen to compete, it's not even, I mean, I used to do it for fun. We used to throw LAN events as preparation. Now this is serious. So you better believe that we're doing anything and everything that we can to make sure that everything is set up right. Activision sent us a whole bunch of little cameras that Matt is gonna put on every player station. I don't know how it's gonna be there's a whole bunch of technical stuff that needs to happen because we're gonna have a coach. Okay, so coaches can't be in the same room or something along those lines, or they can only talk after the match. Same thing as now. Every single thing that has happened LAN is gonna have to happen here. There's going to be a referee on site or on the internet. I don't know how that's gonna work, but there's gonna be a referee looking at us the entire time to make sure that no team is doing any sort of kind of tomfoolery. Okay, this is something that's serious. This is something that we, as I just said, have to make sure that is a successful outing. So above anything else, competition aside, Call of Duty aside, we're here to entertain. And entertain, we shall. The Eagle has landed. Operation storage unit has been completed, and we are now ready to head back to the studio. 2 monitors, 2 PlayStations is all we needed. We did have a whole bunch of other stuff that we could have brought, but we're just gonna leave it there just simply because it doesn't make sense for us to bring it here. Now the true work begins. Maddie is gonna sit around, grab his little scissors and zip ties, and get to work putting together a LAN that, you know, that the boys are gonna be competing on. He loves doing that, right, Maddie? You like doing that? That's a yes from Maddie. That is a yes. Look, I don't mind doing it either, but if I do it, then what's Matt gonna do? That's the way that I see things and the way that I like to do stuff. Anyway, the good and the bad thing about everything that's happening right now is that everything has just become a little bit more uncomfortable. Like obviously, like as I mentioned as we were walking in here, the fact that it is now a ghost town, it's crazy. It's an eerie feeling coming into Frisco Square, seeing the Frisco Square, seeing the amount of people that are no longer here, seeing how many people just don't show up anymore. Nirvana Food and Spirits, Nirvana Coffee, like it's all done. It's all blocked off. It's all empty. Like no one's here, and that is a sad thing. The good thing is that because we're in the same building as a very, very big video game developer, we have security in place, which we sort of get to take advantage of. Matt needs to be buzzed in by security, then he needs to get permission to the elevator, and then once he's into the elevator, he has to go open our door. Like there's a lot of steps that happen in order to get to the hex quarters, which I like personally. Safety first. Oh my God, look at this. It is completely and utterly empty. Maddie. Take your time. All right, Matt, let's get this bread. Ugh. Damn, you need to hit the gym. I think we all do, Matt. No worries there. Yeah, put those 2. What's in here? This has been in here for a long time. Oh, some hoodies. Leave a like on the video if you want me to send you a hoodie. And a comment. All right, sorry, Matt. My bad. Don't yell at me. Right this way, Maddie. You got it? Don't drop it. You put a scratch on those things, it's scratching your butt. Hey, Maddie. All right, Matt, so this is what I was thinking. All right, since we usually put everything like, yeah, I say we put it horizontally. Monitors facing this way, players facing this way. That way we can catch B-roll. Let's pretend that Alan here. Let's pretend that Alan wasn't as handsome as he is, and that's Scumpy. He needs to be facing this way, monitor that way we can get cool B-roll. You know, like this. Yeah. You get it? Yeah, that was dope. No, shake the cam. Oh, never mind. Just like that, the setup has already been created and done, and everything's good. The boys are now here. They're doing a couple of tests. What's happening?
We're doing the vetoes right now. You know, I'm trying to get a listen in, but they pulled Troy away from us, so we're going back.
Huh? It's chilly in here, man. Come on, dude.
So Scump feels like it's a little bit too cold in here, so I'm gonna do whatever I can to turn the heat up because it is cold. If not, we're gonna have to give him some a heater, a space heater, that is. All right, let's return to the competition. So right now, Matt Foremore is playing from home because obviously we're not gonna make him travel in this climate. And by this climate, I mean the current state that we are going through. I will say this though. I did offer to get him a private jet, so there's no excuses. Depending on his performance today, we'll determine whether or not we leave him there or we bring him out here. Get him a nice Airbnb, sanitized, pre-sanitized. Maybe stay at my house. If he's cleared, of course, from the thing. If he hasn't been abiding by the rules of 6 feet of distance, social distancing, and otherwise, then obviously we can't come to the house. How about we just don't move to the house? All right, we just finished an 0-3. It wasn't even miraculous. How do I explain it? It was glorious the way that this 0-5 reverse sweep came about. Is that called the reverse sweep when you 0-5 when you come back from 0? It's just a comeback. It was a crazy comeback, and to have Envoy finish it with a ninja defuse, that's incredible. And there's no better way to end a game like that. Just like there's no better way to end this vlog. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you guys enjoyed the video, please do not leave without leaving a like. Having said that, and with that said, I'm gonna see you guys too. I'm lying. I don't know when I'm gonna see you guys, but better believe that one day, out of nowhere, it's just gonna appear like crop circles in signs and all that stuff. I'm just gonna appear somewhere and it's gonna be back to normal. El Chefe coming back. I finally got the will and the want to start recording some cooking videos, and that is what I will be doing. So thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you when I see you at the same damn time, I guess. At the same damn time.
This allergy season, your eyes can feel better. Similasan allergy eye drops are made with natural active ingredients, not harsh chemicals. Similasan of Switzerland. Feel good about feeling better.
When the difference
between winning and losing
is measured in milliseconds,
everything counts. The Alienware Legendary Battle Station.
Vince Carter meant everything to pro basketball in Canada. You can't tell the story of the Toronto Raptors' rise to relevance and excellence without featuring Vince. You can't track the new generation of Canadian hoops lovers nor the pipeline of Canadian pro players without acknowledging Vince's influence. Carter was a pioneer, a superstar, an icon, and an inspiration. And for over a decade, the whole city of Toronto hated his guts. In 1998, the Toronto Raptors had only existed for 3 years, and just like all 3-year-olds, they sucked. Naughty jerseys and fun young players generated neither wins nor significant Canadian enthusiasm for a winter pro sport that wasn't hockey. The crappy Vancouver Grizzlies weren't helping matters, though they too looked great. Raps GM Glenn Grunwald changed things in Toronto. He ditched the existing young core, then on draft night 98, pulled off an unusual pick and swap to land North Carolina swing Vince Carter. Carter was coming off 3 sensational years at UNC, in which he provided wins and astounding above-the-rim highlights. Here was a perfect new face of the franchise. Here was a player people couldn't help but compare to another high-flying Tar Heel gamer who delivered the city its first taste of pro basketball glory. Carter brushed that comparison aside with his words, but not with his play. He balled the out from day one. Carter won 99 Rookie of the Year by a long shot. In his second season, he became one of the NBA's top 5 scorers and led the entire league in All-Star voting. Carter ushered in a new NBA millennium by almost single-handedly resurrecting the dunk contest. Vince was polite and likable, and he had enough star power to build Toronto's stand as a hotspot for basketball and basketball culture. And Carter didn't just make the Raptors cool. By his second season, he made them good. While Vince led the way, his cousin, Tracy McGrady, brought even more youthful energy off the bench. This sturdy cast of veterans rounded out a squad that, for the first time in its history, posted a winning record. Winning for the first time meant a first-ever trip to the playoffs. It went about as well as you'd expect for an upstart 6 seed led by the 23-year-olds. The Knicks swept the Raptors. Carter played poorly, shooting a combined 8 of 37 in games 1 and 3. Dismal. The Game 2 loss included a little extra intrigue. Vince scored an efficient 27 points and got a chance to create his and Toronto's first signature playoff moment. In Madison Square Garden, on national TV, down 1 with the ball and time running out, Vince sized up the defense, made his move, and swung the ball to D. Brown, who missed. So, not a great first postseason. Out came the MJ comparisons. If this guy's the next Jordan, why is D. Brown taking the final shot? But Carter was already on record saying he was more interested in being a team player and building his own identity than being the next MJ. And MJ was already on record saying Vince doesn't play defense. Character analysis of the young star surfaced little hints of unease. Carter, for instance, pointed out that teammates sometimes thought he was faking his pained reactions after fouls. Newspaper columnists focused on the pep talk Vince's mother Michelle gave him before Game 2 of that series and how much he still deferred to her. Speaking of the team as a whole, Raptors coach Butch Carter made an observation that would immediately prove astute. He said expiring contracts and uncertain futures distracted his team. Chief among the soon-to-be free agents, Tracy McGrady. Indeed, tired of developing in his cousin's shadow, T-Mac bailed in the summer of 2000 for Orlando, where he immediately broke out as one of the league's best players. A mini beef hit the grill. The once close cousins didn't talk for a while, and Vince promised to score a lot against his old team. Charles Oakley, of all people, helped those two squash them, but the eyes of Toronto and the media only peered deeper into Vince's soul. Take this Sports Illustrated feature from January of 2000. Recounting Vince's famous dunk against France in the prior summer's Olympics, the esteemed S.L. Price described Carter as a bully, an ass, his celebration insufferable, and surprising from someone once viewed as the league's great nice hope, the antidote to thuggishness. Price went on to detail hardship Vince had experienced, recently during his rise to stardom, and years ago as a child. He scrutinized Vince's relationship with his mother, who Price deemed fiercely protective and always watching. He quoted Vince expressing appreciation for his first NBA coach, Butch Carter, who had since been fired. And he quoted veteran teammate Antonio Davis, who insisted Vince was motivated by getting mad, and that without such motivation, he was a different player. More psychoanalysis, more whiffs of tension. Carter grew tired of all the prying. He became standoffish with local and national media, and in what he later insisted was a joke, said Toronto fans didn't care about it. In that article from February of 2001, you'll also notice the reporter placing some of the blame for Carter's coldness on his mother, and issuing a bit of a warning. The media plays a big part in how a public figure is portrayed to fans. A sound point, especially considering the Toronto fan base. Many Canadian fans were already looking ahead to Carter's free agency, when he would surely leave them like McGrady. For now, there was basketball. Carter suffered from chronic tendon pain known as jumper's knee, which cost him a handful of games and the will to defend his dunk contest championship. Nevertheless, Carter's regular season numbers ballooned even further. The The team around him, now featuring eminent head coach Lenny Wilkins and a restocked supporting cast, improved to a franchise-best 47 wins. That set up a 2001 playoff rematch with the Knicks, a series in which Carter once again struggled in games 1 and 3. But the Raptors hung around with a Game 2 victory. And this time, perhaps provoked by Oakley challenging his manhood, Vince rose to the occasion and led Toronto to victories in Games 4 and 5. The Raptors' first ever playoff win triggered a dream battle with the Eastern Conference's other rising star, Allen Iverson and his Philadelphia 76ers. It was a fantastic series. Both stars poured on the points. Iverson's 52-point Game 5 pushed Toronto to the brink of elimination, but a brilliant Carter performance sent it back to Philly for a winner-take-all Game 7. Just one thing. Carter told Raptors management he already had plans on May 20, 2000. Fulfilling a promise to his mother, Vince had finished his degree at UNC and planned to attend the graduation ceremony in Chapel Hill. Vince insisted there would be no issue. He'd fly to Carolina, snatch his diploma and say thank you, then hop back on the plane to Philly well ahead of game time. No problem. His teammates, well, responses ranged from, I hope he thinks he's making the right decision, it's a big game that I'm behind him, to, I hope the weather holds up, to no comment. To Carter's credit, the morning went as planned. He sounded super energized by the experience.
I'm just glad it's over.
But if anyone, teammate or otherwise, dared criticize his move,
I don't care.
Strange vibes from that conversation. But the whole ordeal would be forgotten, if not celebrated, if Carter delivered a great performance in Game 7. Well, Vince kinda sucked. Admittedly sluggish in the first couple minutes and just inaccurate throughout. Thankfully for the Raptors, Iverson was hurting and didn't play any better. Antonio Davis and Aaron McKee led their teams in scoring. A grueling Game 7 came down to one last play. Raptors ball, down 1, time expiring. Vince Carter got the ball and a shot to write his own story. He could be the guy who accomplished everything in one day, or the guy who bit off more than he could chew. Vince missed.
No good! And the Sixers hold on and advance to the conference finals!
The Raptors were eliminated. The Sixers advanced, eventually all the way to the finals. While plenty of peers, fans, and media maintained respect for Carter's decision, questions would linger. If you ask them today, members of the 01 Raptors will tell you Vince's choice to attend graduation did mess with his routine. In 2018, Charles Oakley was characteristically blunt when asked if Carter's graduation trip cost them the victory.
If Vince doesn't go to graduation,
But hey, even though it ended with controversy and heartbreak, 2001 brought progress. Vince's best season yet, the team's best season yet, a playoff win, and later that summer, a tremendous run. In early August 2001, Carter announced an extension to his Raptors contract, 6 years and a maximum salary of over $90 million. He loved the city, he loved being a Raptor, and moreover, he loved running those aggressive games. The Raptors were spending to retain Carter's supporting cast, and they swung another big move to pry 38-year-old legend Hakeem Olajuwon away from his longtime home in Houston. Grunwald would later regret. In any event, the message to fans was clear. The Raptors planned to contend, and Vince was on board. The superstar didn't run away. Toronto was his home and his business, his donated court, his annual charity game, his nightclub that attracted stars from all over. This new era of commitment and certainty began well. The Raptors won 29 of their first 50 games and entered All-Star Weekend 2002 near the top of their division. But their last victory before the break saw Vince exit early, having aggravated that issue with his left leg. Carter, once again the leader in fan voting, would have to miss the All-Star break, and then a bunch of Raptors games after that. The Raps took a nosedive without Carter, and kept losing even after his return in late February. On March 19th, the once competent Raptors got crushed to drop their 17th out of the last 18 games, sinking to a record of 30-38. Before their next outing, Toronto pulled the plug on Vince. He went in for arthroscopic surgery to clean up his left knee, a procedure that did not directly repair the jumper's knee issue in his tendon. He'd just have to rest and rehabilitate that injury. So Vince was done for the year. Grunwald called it a disappointing moment and a disappointing season for the franchise and its cornerstone. Reporters couldn't help but point out that Carter, lacking leadership and gritless, no longer warranted comparisons to Michael Jordan. Jordan, by the way, was looking surprisingly strong in his first year of unretirement with the Wizards, just piling on at this point. Meanwhile, the Raptors' season suddenly tilted upward. Literally the day they lost Vince, Toronto commenced a lengthy winning streak. They rallied to a record of 42-40 and climbed back into a playoff matchup with the Pistons. The Raptors lost that series, but kept it surprisingly close against Jerry Stackhouse and company. Vince didn't show up for some of the action in Detroit, ostensibly because of knee swelling. Some didn't buy that explanation, and pointed out that just a year before, Carter had gone to extreme lengths to get where he wanted to be. When a reporter prodded Grunwald with skepticism about the reasons Carter wasn't on the sideline supporting his teammates, Grunwald cursed at him and called him a liar. If you promised someone $90-something million, then lost him for the most important part of the ensuing season, you too might be a little tense. And if you think that's tense, come join me for the 02-03 Raptors season. Vince's rehab culminated in a grand Nike-sponsored tour of Asia during the summer of 02. Vince showed off his healthy legs with dunk exhibitions, and when asked about the Jordan comparisons, gave the headline writers some material. When it's all said and done, I can be better than him. So Carter dismissed Jordan comparisons when he was thriving, but now invited them while he was on the mend. This in turn invited the opinion that Carter didn't produce anything like Jordan, didn't lead like Jordan, and still consulted his mom on all matters. Harsh, but Carter had made a cocky and rather untimely comparison for a guy whose team had played better without him just months ago. Vince later insisted he was misquoted on the Jordan stuff. But fans quickly forgot about all that because days later, in the third game of the season, Carter strained his left quad again and sat out most of November. Well, he sat out basketball games anyway. During rehab, Carter created a bit of a kerfuffle by getting on stage and dancing at a Nelly concert in Toronto, all while his teammates were in Atlanta getting their asses kicked. Carter returned from that injury and controversy to a losing team. He grew frustrated when he couldn't turn it around. In mid-December, he strained his right knee, the other one, and this time missed over a month of action. Folks began to chatter. Former Raptor Keon Clark called Carter someone who wanted the recognition but wouldn't work for it. A reporter accused the franchise of babying Carter into mediocrity. Grunwald and Wilkins would neither push nor honestly appraise their pricey but often unavailable centerpiece. Carter swore he felt ready to play, but the team made him wait. The absent star felt compelled to defend his toughness and work ethic. Never would I run away from basketball. By the 03 All-Star break, Carter had played less than a third of Toronto's games, and the further depleted Raptors held a ghastly 14-34 record. But All-Star voters had not caught up to that. Though he'd barely played all season, Carter received well over 1 million votes and was slated to start in the Eastern Conference. Out came the critics. Charles Barkley led the chorus of people saying Carter hadn't played enough to earn a starting spot, and that he should give the spot to Jordan, who planned to retire at season's end. Vince was like, but the people voted for me. And he held that stance until right before the game, an event during which Mariah Carey wore Jordan's jersey as a dress. Carter relented at the last minute and gave his starting spot to the luminary. The whole thing was way more awkward than it had been. Just look at Jordan's face here.
All-Star has just asked to be replaced in the starting lineup by Michael Jordan. 6'7" forward for the Toronto Raptors, four-time NBA All-Star, Vince Carter.
And even after relenting, Vince got criticized. The vibes never improved. The Raptors kept losing and dipped well out of the playoff picture. Near the end of a meaningless April loss to the Nets, Carter landed on Richard Jefferson's foot, twisted his ankle, and was scratched for the rest of the season. So, 2 years after signing his extension, Carter had yet to represent Toronto in another playoff game. He instead represented the Raptors at the '03 lottery, where they fell a few picks short of the grand prize. Toronto made two big moves that summer. One was replacing Coach Wilkins with noted screaming enthusiast Kevin O'Neill. The other was using the 4th lottery pick on Chris Bosh, a gangly power forward who got a lovely welcome from Vince. The 03-04 Raptors looked decent, and Grunwald stayed active, trading two of Carter's longtime teammates to the Bulls for Jalen Rose and Donovan Marshall. But after that okay start, the Raps buckled at midseason. Injuries piled up, Grunwald and O'Neill butted heads, and playoff hopes faded. Something had to give. In this case, everything gave. Raptors ownership, a company called Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, MLSE, led by a man named Richard Petty, canned Grunwald as GM in April, just weeks before his contract was set to expire anyway. There went the guy who drafted him and who helped persuade him to stay long-term. The person chosen to replace Grunwald would have to restore some joy to a disgruntled star while also developing the very promising Bosh, while also managing the expensive but uneven roster Grunwald had accumulated trying to keep Carter happy. Oh, and the new GM would have to replace Coach O'Neill, who mouthed off about Raptors ownership and got himself fired too. All this made the summer of 2004 huge. Carter went to his closest confidant within the MLS, Richard Tannenbaum. And received a promise that ownership would keep Carter abreast of the hiring process. They did not. Carter lobbied hard for NBA legend and former Magic executive Julius Erving to be considered for GM. But MLSE barely gave Dr. J an interview. By early June, he'd been ruled out entirely. Instead, Toronto ownership surprised their star by hiring Rob Babcock. Weeks later, Babcock used the Raptors lottery pick to draft Rafael Arujo over Andre Iguodala. A mistake. A couple days after that, Babcock hired Sam Mitchell as head coach. Vince's distance from these decisions prompted trade rumors. Babcock denied those rumors, but then kind of made it sound like a trade wasn't totally out of the question, then kind of put the ball in Vince's court. So what did Vince have to say? At that point, publicly, out of his own mouth, very little. Speaking from his summer camp, Vince only announced that he wouldn't say anything. But Nav Bhatia, a well-known Raptors superfan and friend of Vince's, was not so coy. He went on record to say that Carter had no problem with the new GM or the new coach. Vince did have a problem with Petty and company. Not just because of what happened with Grunwald and Irving and so forth, but because the team had failed to acquire any additional All-Star caliber players. Vince had been particularly hopeful he'd get to play with Jamal Magloire or Steve Nash, two Canadian products who fans would have also liked. And some fans took up his fight. A Keep Vince, Trade Petty movement popped up around Carter's charity game in late June. Of course, none of those powerful people were going in. So, by late summer, Vince's camp began to make some noise. The New York Daily News reported in August that Vince and his agent had met with the Raptors to request a trade. Their reporting, of course, focused on Vince. A couple weeks later, Vince said it himself, publicly. It's time for a trade. Not because of the fans, not because of the city, just because it's time. Vince said he was tired of giving this franchise and its personnel decisions a chance. Time to move on. But September is pretty late in the offseason to deal away your star, especially when the whole league knows what's going on. Opening night arrived without a trade on the table. In the meantime, the franchise fired the athletic trainer who'd become Vince's friend and gave away the parking spot they'd once reserved for Vince's mom. The players knew the lingering trade demand would be potentially a big distraction, and Vince's public statements risked alienating some teammates. Those teammates did their best to placate Vince, even rallying in his defense when the Sporting News ranked Carter number 41 on their list of the league's best players. Mitchell prepared to start his first head coaching job with a lot to manage, though he professed no expectation Vince would cause a distraction. Well, on that topic, we must turn to Jalen Rose, who was a Raptor in November. According to Rose, the team was in Portland for their 7th game of the season when Coach Mitchell approached Vince while he was getting treatment in the locker room. Here's the rest of that story.
And Sam Mitchell made a comment to Vince about always being into it and always being on the training table. So that's kind of how Vince does Sam. Sam nudged Vince back. Well, you know it, they tangled up and they really trying to slam each other on the ground.
Yes, Rose says Vince body slammed his rookie head coach in like the second week of the season. Mitchell still insists the fight didn't happen as described, that it was more of a jokey interaction in which they fell down, and that he and Carter had a great relationship. Either way, November 04 was a strange month. Strange in obvious ways, like Vince getting booed by fans in Toronto, and strange in less obvious ways. Another story from the time goes that at home against Seattle, Carter deliberately tipped off some Sonics players to a play Toronto was running in the final minute of a close loss. But while fans were turning against him, Carter didn't express all his disgruntlement behind the scenes. He, for instance, smirked and gave petulant responses to questions about why he seemed to be withholding the most entertaining part of his game.
I don't want to dunk anymore. Dunking's overrated.
The Raptors grew desperate to trade Carter, but getting a fair return only grew more difficult in early December. Carter came up limping after straining his Achilles against the Pistons and was sidelined indefinitely. Fans and media groaned. Babcock insisted that trading an injured Vince Carter was the last thing on his mind. A week later, Babcock traded an injured Vince Carter to the New Jersey Nets. The return package was underwhelming at the time and looks even worse in retrospect. Carter's injury history, reputation, and contract were such that Toronto felt compelled to give away the most important player in franchise history for Eric Williams, Aaron Williams, Alonzo Mourning, who refused to play in Toronto, and 2 first-round picks that didn't amount to much. Carter stayed sidelined for a bit with the Nets, including their first visit to Toronto just a couple days after the trade. He debuted just before the New Year, and just after the New Year, gave an interview to TNT's John Thompson. This part of the conversation further incensed Raptors fans.
Do you think Vince Carter has pushed himself as hard as he should have pushed himself?
In years past, I was just fortunate enough to have the talent and be able to, you get spoiled when you're able to do a lot of things and you see that and you really don't have to work at it. But now I think there's so much with all the injuries and things that's going on, I have to work a little harder.
Carter and Thompson both said that section was edited to take quotes out of context. Vince swore he had never dogged it.
I said, I didn't come to play, I didn't play hard, I didn't do this, oh my goodness, never did.
But between that and the other leaked stories, the heat was already on for Vince's return to the city in uniform. That was April 15th, 2005. The Raptors sat well behind the Nets in the Atlantic Division standings, headed for another lottery while Vince and company were headed to the playoffs. Vince was healthy and playing solidly in New Jersey. His numbers, splashed across the home broadcast, looked way better than they had to start the season in Toronto. Both parties wore their feelings. Carter showed up at the Air Canada Center in the jersey of Julius Erving, his preferred candidate for the Toronto GM job back in '04. Raptor fans showed up with all manner of anti-Vince material. Vandalized jerseys, bibs with his number 15, and so many things. The fans booed Vince's introduction and reveled in an early Vince wins. But Carter found his bearings to score 24 of his 39 points in the second half of a blowout Nets victory. The relationship would stay this shape for some time. The Nets came to town, Vince got booed, the Nets won, Vince said something catty about the boo. In January of '06, Carter came to town and had a jokey mid-game slap fight with his old teammate, Morris Peterson. The refs misinterpreted what was happening and ejected Peterson. Then Vince hit the game. In December of '06, Vince got booed once more in his first ever loss to the Raptors in Toronto. Ironically, Chris Bosh missed that game for the Raps because of a knee injury. But Bosh was developing into a real first option, and his rise propelled the Raptors ahead of New Jersey in the standings. The Nets visited the Raptors in February of '07, days before Bosh was set to make his second All-Star appearance, in the starting lineup, unlike Vince. The Raptors beat the Nets that day, and Toronto fans showered Bosh with MVP chants, which appeared to vex Toronto's last All-Star. Vince said he was just messing around. Bosh said, hey, things have changed around here. But they hadn't all the way changed. In the spring of '07, the Raptors held home court advantage for a first-round playoff matchup against Vince and the Nets. Before the series, Coach Mitchell wearily told reporters and fans to let go of Vince Carter. Bosch somewhat presciently explained the dynamics of the lingering Carter hatred. When fans loved him, they really loved him, and it's a thin line between love and hate. Vince got booed throughout the series and didn't play particularly well. The Nets pulled off an upset anyway, but got wrecked by LeBron James and the Cavs in the next one. And from then on, the beef kind of stagnated. The Raptors made some bad decisions and fell into a lull, eventually losing Bosch in 2010. The Nets floundered and then traded Carter, who had one fun year with the Magic, then spent the next decade bouncing from team to team, settling into a role as a fuzzy, lovable old veteran. It was a surprisingly long, gentle twilight for a player who once seemed like he might fly too close to the sun and burn out his wings forever. Vince showed up in Toronto each year wearing a different uniform and got a few boos, but also some love. Right before his 37th birthday in 2014, Vince came to Toronto as a Dallas Maverick, got booed, then threw down a huge dunk as if to remind everyone of how this whole thing started. And young Raps fans probably needed some reminding. Their team was on the rise again with new stars, and it felt increasingly silly to disparage a growing benchmark. The team even considered signing Vince. 2014 brought the 20th anniversary of the Raptors franchise and the 10-year anniversary of the Disney Carter. Sportsnet ran this Michael Grange feature with a big ol' header saying it was time for Toronto to forgive Vince. At least one Raptors player said the same. And on November 19, 2014, with Carter's Grizzlies in town, the organization took a calculated risk. They played a video tribute for Vince. Here was the scene that the video concluded. Standing ovation. Vince in tears. Me right now, kind of on the verge of tears. It's a beautiful moment, and one that announcers observed could have gone differently.
First, a lot of fans started booing, and then they started rising.
That felt like Toronto collectively deciding it was time to let go. In the years following, the guy who'd once been their electric, immature young gun became one of the oldest and longest tenured players in NBA history. Toronto knew every Vince visit might be his last. Fans showed their appreciation accordingly, like this standing ovation in early 2019. Months later, they watched their team win it all. The Raptors, the Toronto Raptors, became NBA champions. And that's not all. Entering a new decade, Canada claimed not only the NBA's best pro franchise, but many of its exciting young players. It had become a basketball nation. None of that was promised. None of it even seemed plausible until Toronto landed its first big star. A star who fell in love with the city, committed to it, and inspired its future generation. Thanks to misfortune and mistakes, nobody came out of the relationship looking great. Not the fragile, moody athlete, not the inept franchise, not the vindictive fan base. But time healed these wounds. The narrative threads of Vince Carter and Toronto ran together, ran in parallel. They narrowed, and separated entirely. Now they've reconnected. All parties understand how much they mean to one another. This is their story, and it has a happy ending. This beef is history. Thanks for watching Beef History. If you want to see more about that Vince Carter dunk contest, check out this episode of The Winder, or watch anything here. I promise you'll like it. And I promise that if you subscribe to SB Nation, you will.
Okay, fine. We'll save the world. But do it quickly before I change my mind. time.